Is here After Dark Radio. We are here every Wednesday live at 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. If you're listening to this overnight, yes, you can listen live in the afternoon, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern, every Wednesday on Sports Byline, YouTube, as well as Twitch. And we have a lot to get into on the show here today. Every week, somebody heads into the YouTube or the Twitch chat and says, "What are we doing here? We're not talking wrestling?" No, there's no wrestling to speak of on this show. This is After Dark Radio. We're going to talk the paranormal and more every week here on Sports Byline USA. And we do not have a guest today, although when we come back from the break, I will tell you about next week's guest, which is going to be a lot of fun. We do guests every other week. And on the opposite weeks, we do shows like this, where we're going to go over all of the news of the weird, and also hear from you, dear listener. The show is much more fun with you participating. So I'm going to give you the info on how to do that, and then we're going to kick the show off here today. Text messages, 425-780-7566. You can text me at 425-780-7566. The email address, you ready for this? We got it figured out. Bryan, Bryan, at AfterDarkRadioShow.com. That's all one word. Bryan at AfterDarkRadioShow.com. That's the email address. You can also find me on Threads, Instagram, and Cameo. I do cameos at 4W Online, as well as at Bryan Alvarez on X and Blue Sky. Later on, we'll give you the phone numbers. Please don't call the text message line because it does not work. But hey, what do you want to talk about? Anything that is on your mind is fair game if it fits into the After Dark paradigm. 425-780-7566. Bryan at AfterDarkRadioShow.com. We'll get into some news and some feedback when we come back from the break. We got a lot to get into. After Dark Radio, Sports Byline USA. Back on the show, Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio. Live every Wednesday, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. And we talk no wrestling here on the show. It's all weird stuff. Not necessarily paranormal either. Last week we talked about vampire culture, but actually not a lot about vampires. The historic supernatural vampires. And next week on this show, we have a very special guest who will be talking about things that I would presume, in most cases, largely would not be considered paranormal. But I guess you could argue there's a paranormal aspect to some of them because they involve vanishings, people who vanish into thin air. Now, obviously, we've had a lot of shows covering vanishings, and when you think about what it means to vanish, I saw a stat, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was something like every year, like 500,000 people vanish. Now, that sounds crazy, but by vanish, most of those people, they've disappeared because they owe their taxes, they owe child support. There's a lot of different reasons that people vanish. The vast majority of those are not mysterious disappearances. It's just, hey, I don't want to be found, so people vanish. But next week we're going to be talking to Robin Warder, who is the host of the Trail Went Cold podcast. Trail Went Cold is a weekly true crime podcast, explores baffling unsolved mysteries and cold cases. On each episode, host Robin Warder examines a new murder or missing persons case, tackling a wide variety of mysteries from different countries and time periods. After sharing all the details, Robin offers his own personal analysis and theories about what happened. So Robin Warder is going to be our guest on the program next week. And he's done 416 podcasts. So 416. They're not all different cases. Some of them are multi-part podcasts. But the most recent Trail Went Cold was the November 19, 2006 disappearance of Nani Dotson of Littleton, Colorado. She was a first lieutenant, 33-year-old nurse with the U.S. Air Force, traveled from San Antonio, Texas to Colorado with her infant daughter, was staying with her brother, Tony Dotson. Nani left Tony's residence in order to presumably travel to a nearby shopping center, but never returned. Police tracked her cell phone signal, which, by the way, this was 2006. So for those of you that are old like me, we didn't have iPhones back then. So nowadays, tracking these devices is, I would presume, significantly easier. But they traced the cell phone signal to a field. No trace of her was found. They explored a number of different angles, including the possibility she was harmed by a stalker, the estranged father of her child, even her own brother, but she remains a missing person. So that is the subject of his latest podcast. And in fact, I went up and just, I guess it would be about 6 years ago, there was an update. 9news.com in Colorado. 9 News Mornings took a look at Colorado cold cases, and they did an update 11 years later on the disappearance of Nani Dotson. It had been more than a decade since Candace Doyle, that's her mother, saw her daughter. So it affects you to your core, it affects you to your soul, changes you as a person. Nani Dotson was a nurse with the U.S. Air Force, hadn't been seen since November 19, 2006. She was visiting her brother, Tony. He was the last person to see her. She was last seen leaving his house to do some shopping, never came home. On Monday, 3 days later, the family filed a missing persons report. The Detective Elias Alberti of the Sheriff's Office said, "When we do realize a person is missing, or there may be some other circumstances to it, usually we're hours or days behind the time the last person was seen." And of course, the problem there is somebody disappears, and the further you are from the event, the farther people can travel. 3 days, they're gone. There's no body, he said. There's nothing to go off of. And that really helps us in homicide cases, even general evidence. Physical evidence or a crime scene leads to clues, leads to other people. You don't have that in a missing persons case. She was a single mother, 3 months away from being discharged from the Air Force, getting ready to move to Colorado. I know absolutely, her mother said, she would not have walked off. I know that to my soul. Something happened to her. Investigators do believe she was taken against her will, but at this point, there's only one thing that can solve the case, and that is a person coming forward all of these years later to say, this is what I know happened. So that's the subject of his Robin Warder's latest podcast, and we'll be talking to him next week, and, we'll talk about missing persons, and maybe we can throw in some questions about some of these that are particularly mysterious, because they're all mysteries, obviously, but sometimes there are disappearances that are more mysterious than others. For example, we did that show about people who vanished in national forests, and sometimes there are very weird scenarios built around those. Not just somebody disappeared, but we found their clothes, and they had folded their clothes neatly in a pile and then vanished. Why would somebody do that? Or some of the disappearances where someone is then discovered, for example, children, this often happens to, where, the child vanishes, and we're talking massive search parties show up to find the child, and then, days later, they find the child, but sometimes the child is miles and miles away. And we're talking like 2.5 years old. How did they walk thousands of miles up and down hills and end up being found days later? Fine. Like they're fine. Or the other one, which is, well, we found the child sitting in a place that had been searched a dozen times. And this time we went back there and the child was there. So sometimes disappearances are more mysterious than others. But we will be talking to Robin Warder next week. Should mention, by the way, a couple of things. If you want to text us, if you have any thoughts on anything we talk about here today, or if you have maybe you and wherever you live have a local area mysterious disappearance, I'd love to hear any feedback today. 425-780-7566 is the text message line. That is 425-780-7566. And you can also email me, Bryan at AfterDarkRadioshow.com. Use that email address for today, so you only have to check one account. Bryan at AfterDarkRadioshow.com. But I should mention that since we started going live here on Sports Byline, I've plugged shirts. And in fact, I'm wearing it today for those of you on video. New After Dark Radio Show shirt. If you want to grab it, you can go to f4wonline.com/shirts. That is f4wonline.com/shirts. Also today, we did a show a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the drones. In fact, we did a couple of shows about this. I did a couple of shows before we went to Sports Byline, and then actually on the Sports Byline debut, we talked to Carl Stern and got his thoughts on the drone flap of 2024, where essentially it started actually around the New Jersey area. There were the mystery drones that were seen around military bases. And then, there were a couple of reports here and there. There's a drone that probably shouldn't be there, mystery drone. And then all of a sudden, kaboom. I mean, drone reports, hundreds of people calling the police, reporting drones. Then the stories got into, man, these drones are gigantic. These are the size of SUVs. 8-foot drones. And, there's video, there's photos, and then it starts to kind of spread outside of the New Jersey area. Now you got people on the West Coast. We saw these drones. And, it was a big thing. I did a whole show on it, or I did a portion of a show. And then, sometime after doing that show, I started to really look into these drones, and I came to the conclusion that we were all witnessing a mass delusion. Well, there has been a follow-up, and we're going to talk about that after the break. After Dark Radio, Sports Byline USA. Show. Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio. Got a lot of feedback here during the break on the chat. Don't forget, in Texas, 425-780-7566. That's 425-780-7566, or Bryan at AfterDarkRadioshow.com. Michael here said, a kid I grew up with, his dad faked his death because they were in enormous debt. He drowned while fishing, but no body was ever found. Allegedly, he got tangled in a lobster trap and drowned, and his mom always used a P.O. box instead of regular home delivery. We knew it was BS, he said. I was just going to ask that question. How do you know he didn't actually drown getting stuck in a crab pot or whatever? Just a feeling, or do you have some evidence there? And this person here notes, I'm in Scotland. Nothing weird here than the occasional Nessie sighting. But he is 160 miles south of Loch Ness. And the last thing says, I've turned into a conspiracy theorist. Actually, I've not. If anything, it's the opposite. Because the whole story of the drones was some big conspiracy. I don't think it was at all, as I'll get into here in a moment. But one other thing I want to mention, because somebody did mention it in chat, we don't talk pro wrestling here on this show, except when we do. And there is a tie-in, in fact. And that is that somebody noted that pro wrestler Perry Saturn vanished. And that is absolutely true. I had forgotten about that. He vanished and then reappeared. So, allegedly, I guess Saturn claimed that he, I guess, walked in on a rape or something, and he went to help this person, and in doing so, he got shot in the back of the head and neck, in the kind of the trap area here, and thought he was punched, but turned out he was shot. And afterwards, he fell into drugs, meth, and some other stuff, and ended up homeless, and then vanished. As in, his friends had no idea where he was at. His family, no idea where he was at. People presumed he was dead. I mean, gone, vanished. And this was around 2006, 2007, and for like 3 years, it was like nobody knew where Perry Saturn was. And then in 2010, he showed up. He was just back, and claimed that he had gotten off drugs and got everything handled and returned. But yeah, for a 3-year period, Perry Saturn vanished, gone, nobody, family, friends, nobody, just disappeared, to the point that people were presuming that he was dead. But it happens, and now he's back and does a lot of wrestling podcasts. So there you go. All right, so the drones. So my theory, which remains my theory, is that there were some actual drones, okay? I'm not denying that. I'm not sitting here telling you that there were no drones. I'm sure there were drones. I think that the vast majority, and I don't think there were a lot of them, but I think that there were some drones, maybe in weird places. Some people saw them, they freaked out, and then it became like your classic UFO, Mothman, your classic flap. Once a couple people saw it, everyone all of a sudden around the New York, New Jersey area, around all these airports, start looking up, and oh my God, there's a drone, there's a drone, there's a drone, there's a drone. So they started taking pictures. This is what I determined after looking into this for a while. Is there's actually a great website. It's called Metabunk, and they go in and they try and check out all of these reports of all sorts of different things all over the world. And what they did was a lot of triangulation, a lot of flight tracker, a lot of everything. You know, all of these different, hey, here's a video that was taken on such and such a date at such and such a time in such and such a place. Well, that's easy. You go on Flight Tracker, you do the triangulation. Oh, they saw that airline. Oh, they saw that airline. Some of them, I mean, it got to the point where, these photos in the press were like clearly airplanes. It's like, there's the wing, there's a tail, there's the lights. And then the thing says like, airplane-shaped a drone. So anyway, I concluded at the end that there were a few very small number of drone sightings where they maybe shouldn't have been, And at that point, everybody just they started seeing drones everywhere. And so that brings us to there was an announcement by the Trump administration a few days ago about these drones. And essentially, Carolyn Leavitt, who is the press secretary, according to Futurism.com, which is where I got this article here, she is the inept press secretary, it says here. She told the public there was nothing to see. She said, quote, "After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. This information," she said, "comes directly from the President of the United States." So that was a statement they made. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA, and this came directly from Trump. Okay, so this article here in Futurism states that a user on X, it's always a good start, a user on X reached out to an Air Force veteran turned UFO whistleblower named Jake Barber to ask for his thoughts. Barber responded, "The activity there was not FAA approved. I know firsthand." He said, "I was assigned there specifically to look at the debacle from a FAA violation standpoint in order to give a basis to the FBI. Someone is not presenting the whole story to our president." And it goes on from there. Barber, by the way, is the guy who went on News Nation and told the story that we talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago, about encountering those eggs. Remember, he picked up those eggs? And then there was video that came out of these supposed eggs getting picked up, and everybody was examining the footage. And, of course, it's the usual UFO footage, meaning it's very, very blurry. You can't see anything. It could, in fact, be an egg that's someone getting out of the dipping thing on Easter. But anyway, whatever it is, that's this guy, this Jake Barber. But anyway, so I read all of this, and I thought, okay, believing what I believe, which is largely a mass delusion, what do we make of all of this? And this was my conclusion. So the press secretary is reporting information that she says came from Trump, okay? Whatever you want to think about Donald Trump, he is not personally triangulating sightings, and he's not doing his own investigation. He's getting this news from somebody else. He's getting briefed, okay? So my guess is that somebody briefed him. He then told the press secretary. The press secretary then made her statement, and by then it's a giant game of telephone. I would presume that what Trump was told was essentially what the government stated several weeks ago, which is, a number of these drones are civilian drones being flown, but the vast majority of them are misinterpretations, commercial airliners, stars, planets, etc. I don't remember the exact statement they had. I don't have it in front of me, but I would bet that Trump was told something similar to that. He then told the press secretary, "I've been told that these things, they're just drones. Everything's okay. There's no foreign." And then she responded with, "They were in large numbers authorized to be flown by the FAA." Because, and even if you go by what Barber wrote here, they're not FAA approved, I know firsthand. Well, first off, I don't know if the guy knows firsthand or not, but, the vast majority of these, I don't think were approved by the FAA because I don't even think they existed. And I do think that there were civilian drones probably being flown in places they weren't supposed to be flown, so they weren't FAA approved. So I don't see anything in any of this that disputes anything that I figured from day one, which is it started out as something. Maybe some idiot flew his drone over a military base when he wasn't supposed to. What can they do about it? They're not going to shoot him down, And then from there, it grew and it exploded. And, if you missed the show I did several weeks ago, this is not the first time it happened. And in fact, there was something virtually identical to this that happened, I believe, in Colorado, which is ironic because we were just talking about that missing Air Force from Colorado. But this happened in Colorado in 2019, and it was literally the exact same thing. I mean, if you read what happened in Colorado in 2019, it's exactly what happened in New Jersey. It started out with there were a couple of drones that were spotted over like a military installation or whatever. And then from there, it's like everyone started seeing drones. And there was this giant flap. And literally the conclusion they came to when that one was over was the exact same conclusion, which is most of these are misrepresentations. Most of these are planets, stars, commercial airliners, etc. Just goes in a circle. Goes around, comes around. Back in a moment. After Dark Radio. Bryan Alvarez here After Dark Radio. Here live on Sports Byline, YouTube, and Twitch. Every Wednesday, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. Our YouTube channel, f4wonline.com/YouTube. That is f4wonline.com/YouTube. And the Twitch The Twitch channel is twitch.tv/F4W video. So there you go. You can join us and watch the show. See my lovely face for an hour on YouTube or Twitch. And at this point, the phone lines are open. If you want to give us a call, now's your chance to participate. So once again, if you want to call us, listen carefully. If you want to call on the phone, 618-762-3275. That is 618-762-DARK. I actually got that one. 618-762-3275. If you would like to text us, actually before that, if you are an international caller, you can use what we call the International Web Browser Line. Yes, you can call in from your computer from anywhere in the universe, and the address is callinstudio.com. That's callinstudio.com/show/afterdark. So once again, anywhere in the universe, you can use your web browser by going to callinstudio.com/show/afterdark. If you want to text us, 425-780-7566. That is 425-780-7566. And you can email me, Bryan at afterdarkradioshow.com. And we will go into some of those as well as we get going here. But we do have a caller on the line from Bedford, PA. You're on the air. What's going on? Who is this? And what you calling about?
This is Ryan from Cumberland, Maryland.
Oh, really, Ryan? Yes, what's up?
I have a question for you. There's a interesting character. He's sort of like a legend around your area. His name's Zach Hubbard. Basically, he can predict like sports games using gematria. I know he used to be a school teacher, but I guess he was a little bit too controversial and ended up being fired. So I wonder if you've ever had any encounters with Mr. Hubbard or anyone that claimed to be a gematria expert.
Zach Hubbard?
Yes, he writes a number of books, too, that you can buy on Amazon.com. Number of games and letters and numbers.
All right. And he's from around here, you say?
Bedley is from Everett, according to the internet.
All right. I will check that out. Ryan, you're currently unbanned for the time being, so thank you very much for the call. Hey, for those of you that listen to Wrestling Observer Live as well, so I picked up that call right there, and on my screen here, it tells me the phone number, and it also tells me when the last time this person called was. So it claims that that person there, Ryan in Cumberland, called on January 22nd. But Ryan in Cumberland has not actually called the show in a long, long time. So now the question is, who called on January 22nd, either using Ryan in Cumberland's phone, or who did Ryan in Cumberland disguise his voice as on January 22nd? Anyway, I will, because he was a good caller today, look up Zach Hubbard, who was allegedly from Everett, and see if I can find out more, and maybe Zach Hubbard for president? What is this? It says he lives in Everett, Washington. There's actually more here, but this is something that I should look at. I'll just put it this way. Off air. This person here sent a text message. It's Johnny, California. Always wanted to know your take on there being multiple different species of Neanderthals. You know, they found, I think, 7 or 8 different types of human-like skulls without sutures, possibly meaning they predate modern humanity. Not exactly sure what you're getting at here, Johnny, but Neanderthals do predate us. And I'm not sure exactly what you're asking here. I will say this, you know, when I was a kid, because I'm old, you know, you'd watch all of these cartoons or movies, and first off, they called them Neanderthals, even though it's Neanderthal. But these Neanderthals, when I was a kid, were like these you know, big, stupid-looking, carry a club, big head, giant brow, covered in hair, stupid cavemen, etc. But if you actually study Neanderthals nowadays, what we know about them, I mean, first off, many of you listening right now, and this is not meant to be an insult, it's a factual statement, you have Neanderthal genes in you now. I forget what percentage it is, but a fair number of you listening right now have Neanderthal DNA in you. And I believe that if there were a living Neanderthal walking down the street in a business suit or just T-shirt and shorts, you would not be able to tell them apart from anybody else. It is not like, what was that Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer or whatever? I told you I was old. That's not, your Neanderthal looked very much like a modern human. The head was pretty much exactly the same size. Brain, I mean, they were remarkably similar to you and I, and probably unnoticeable in just walking down the street if you saw one today. All right, let's go to the phones. If you want to give us a call, once again, the phone number 618-762-3275. We are going to go to Matthew, who's in Nashville, Tennessee. Matthew, what's going on?
Hey, man. Appreciate you taking my call. Wanted to ask you kind of your thoughts.
Are you sure you're not Carl Stern, by the way?
I'm pretty sure. I'm Matthew.
Okay, go ahead.
Last time I checked, I was anyway.
All right. You never know.
Wanted to get your thoughts on a lot of the plane crashes that have been happening. Obviously, the big one at Washington, D.C. last week. There was another one in Philadelphia. Engine caught on fire in Houston. And then today, near you, there was a small plane. I think the wings clipped at Seattle, Tacoma. So do you think this is a case of, like, the media just reporting more because it's been more in the news, or do you think there's more than meets the eye here?
Well, I want to thank you very much for the call. Who was that guy that said I was a conspiracy theorist? I don't think there's more than meets the eye. Fact of the matter is, things happen, and sometimes a lot of things happen in a short period of time. And I think that's what's happening here. And yes, literally before we went on the show, I got the alert. A Japan Airlines plane taxiing at Seattle Tacoma International Airport struck a parked Delta Airlines plane. So thankfully, no injuries reported. The Japan Airlines plane's right wing struck the tail of a Delta plane around 10:15 a.m. on a taxi line. No injuries, minimal impact, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll put it this way. It's not... I don't think the media is overblowing things, okay? But when I was, like I said, I was making lunch, and, I got this giant, this alert on my phone. It came through as an alert, like a breaking news update. There was this plane hit another plane at SeaTac. So, when I saw that, I was like, oh, my God. I just envisioned same thing. 2 airline, boom, crash in midair, everyone's dead. So then you read the article, and it's like, a taxiing plane clipped the wing of a parked plane. There's no injuries. Why is this a breaking news story? It's a giant... But the reason it is because there have been several incidents lately. So because of that, now this thing has been elevated as a news story to the very top of the Seattle Times. When in reality, had there not been several plane crashes over the course of the last week or two, that wouldn't even have been a story. It wouldn't have been a breaking news story. It may not even have been in the news that a plane bonked into another plane's tail. I don't know if it happens regularly, but I think that because of everything that is going on right now, that suddenly became a bigger story than it would have been otherwise. And I think that often happens, if I'm trying to think of something that's not horrible, because I don't like to talk about things that are just terrible. But let's say, I don't know, whatever. If several happen in a short period of time, then a low-level version of that is going to be elevated as a story. So that's what I think happened. And that's that. Would you rather have a beer with a gray or a little green? So basically, this is a question about aliens, and I mean, let's just put it this way. I'm not up on the nomenclature to that degree. I know that, like, when people talk about aliens, there's like all of these different alleged species. There's the insectoid and the reptilian and the grays. And allegedly each of them has like their own whatever, well, the reptilians do this, the grays are like this, these ones are nice, these ones are mean. I can't keep them all straight. So, and I also don't drink. So the answer is I wouldn't have a beer with any of them. All right, let's see if there's anything in the email bin here. Just a test message for myself. All right, a couple of other news notes because we got more stuff to talk about here today. Again, if you want to give us a call, you're welcome to do so. We have open lines available right now at 618-762-3275. That is 618-762-3275. Or you can use the international web browser line, callinstudio.com/show/afterdark. So this isn't really anything all that spectacular, but it's kind of fun. So Google Earth. You guys ever played around with Google Earth? There's a lot of weird things. And this past week, a satellite image covering part of the desolate Antarctic wastes shows a feature that looks deceptively like a face. And it's definitely creepy. From the entrance of a secret base to the silhouette of a giant sea monster, amateur Google sleuths have found all sorts of strange and unusual features in some of the world's remotest places. Latest example, recently discovered and posted on Reddit, shows a bizarre alien-like face, complete with a large nose, 2 closed eyes, and a small slit mouth. So if you want to see the picture, it's not hard. Just go online and Google Antarctica creepy alien face. It'll come right up. And what it is an example of, it's just your brain taking these patterns and creating an image. And I will never forget, when I was a kid reading all these books, and it was 1976 that the photo was taken of the face on Mars. I was 1. So I don't remember this, but, years later, you read it, you see all the articles, Weekly World News, you see it in these books, the face on Mars. And when you look at it, it looks like a frickin' face on Mars. And then, Richard Hoagland, he made a career out of the face on Mars. And I will never forget, because I do remember this. I remember when they sent another probe back, and they were going to go to that area. And in high resolution, they were going to take a picture of the face on Mars. And man, I waited and I waited and I waited up and I waited up. And finally, the picture came in of the face on Mars in high resolution. It was just a frickin' pile of dirt. Looked nothing like a face. That was a sad day. Back in a moment, After Dark Radio. Back here on After Dark Radio, Bryan Alvarez here. And Yeti Pot Pie in the chat, he goes, I did too much unnecessary research on this. But the January 22nd show was when that dude called in about the giant angels he saw when he asked God for a sign. Yeah, the guy who dropped an F-bomb on the air. He was so shocked. Anyway, he told a long story. So maybe Ryan in Cumberland called that day but didn't get through. Well, I can tell you in the other chat, or that's what Ryan claims, he called but didn't get on the air. So I guess we'll see. I've had a lot of people suggest he is Don the Don that calls into the other show. I don't know if he could pull that off, but that's what they say. So anyway, I tweeted out the picture of the face. It actually looks like, we were talking about vampires last week. Have you ever seen the original Nosferatu? That's whose face is there in the middle of Antarctica. So you can head up there to my X, at Bryan Alvarez, and check it out. And if you're a wrestling fan, you can also check out all of the complete maniacs angry at me about Tatum Paxley, even though I didn't say anything negative about her. But that's life, you know? So anyway, next week on the show, Robin Warder, the Trail Went Cold podcast. We're going to talk about unsolved mysteries, cold cases. It should be quite the show. And if you are a subscriber at WrestlingObserver.com, or if you're one of our subscribers on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, and you can get to any of those at f4wonline.com/YouTube, f4wonline.com/Apple, f4wonline.com/Spotify. You will get the entire interview and a bonus 30 minutes. So that's next week on the program. Subscribers get all of these shows, all of the wrestling shows, and more, so check that out. And make sure you check out the store, After Dark Radio, f4wonline.com/shirts. Grab your After Dark Radio Show shirt today. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Thanks, Dom, Darren, everybody in the studio. We'll talk to you next week. After Dark Radio, Sports Byline USA.